was just after 5 o'clock, 17th October 1989, Loma Prieta hit. Boom! That was my birthday. And I just pulled into my driveway and let the dog out of the house. I expected a few people over in about an hour or so, so I was fixing to put a barbecue together. And when the ground started shaking, I didn't even realize it at the moment of what was happening, but it got worse. First, it was a low rumble, and then, the vibration, of course, and then the jolts. And I stepped back, I looked at my truck, and all four wheels were coming off the ground, and the truck was bouncing. I mean, they were coming off about 2 inches up, just hopping. It was surreal. I looked down the street, and all the telephone poles were doing, they were doing, this number, and the lines were whipping, and then they started snapping, and transformers started blowing. And my dog had come out of the house, all splayed out, all four, paws, different directions, and it was trying to get as close as it could to the ground. He, poor guy, he didn't know what was going on either. And then it was quiet. I know a lot of people didn't make it, and I know the infrastructure was screwed up in that area for a long time. Weeks in some places, months in others, especially when they're rebuilding roads. And but I was probably 30 miles away from the epicenter in Loma Prieta, where I was living out there in Campbell. And over the next couple days, it was interesting because there wasn't any stores open for at least 2 days. And of course, my friends never showed up. Guess they had things of their own going on. But man, I lost a good amount of adult beverage, just came crashing off the counters and out of the cabinets. It shook the place up. Didn't really do any damage otherwise, except for a couple spots in the floor shifted, cracked and shifted. I had a cement slab floor foundation under the house there. And but I'm looking around for food, and I'm looking around for water, and I'm taking notice. Nobody knew how long this period was going to last, where there was not too many stores open. If you could get to one, I don't think there was too many gas stations in the area that were even open for at least 2 days. Some of the big, metal roofs collapsed on top of the pumps. Some caught fire. And if you left your house, then you risk being, being picked through by marauders. So it was strange. We, the neighbors all kind of looked out for each other, and we're watching and talking. We're out in the streets. We're listening to our car stereos about, the latest news. It was, surreal. And I feel for the people that are down in San Ramon area today or yesterday. This is the 6th February. But there's a lot of people who get shook up by earthquakes, some worse than others. One of the things that people don't think about is if it lasts more than a week or two and you can't get out of your street because of debris or power lines, or if you've run out of electricity, how do you cook? What do you cook? At that time, I was only prepared for 3 or 4 days, maybe a weekend surprised by, a couple friends, and just some things in the pantry. I literally had more dog food than I did people food, and what's in the refrigerator after 2 or 3 days, that doesn't count anymore. They always say just kind of think about what you have, take a quick inventory, because if it's a minor, it's a power outage, it comes back in a couple hours. If it's an earthquake, especially of any magnitude, then you're going to wind up having all kinds of issues with water, sanitation, right? Different things. And got to eat. Take out the stuff in your freezer and cook it up first. Fire up the Barbie, coach. Right? And that's kind of what started me on my journey to trying to be prepared, or at least as prepared as I could be under whatever circumstances. You can't cover it all. I mean, now I live in an area where it's fire season is serious shit. I had just moved up here. I was waiting for the gal across the way to make her way up, which took probably 2 or 3 months after she bought the place. But so fire season, I've got an app on my phone that's a badass app that tells you wind direction, shows you where the fires are, gives you updates in real time. I had 20 chickens, 18 or 20 chickens that I was responsible for until she could get up here and manage to take care of them herself. And I had my 2 dogs at the time, and I'm trying to think, how in the heck am I going to get out of here with 20 chickens? And you think about it, right? They say pack a bag. It's not that simple. You can't just leave your chickens running loose. I mean, this is the Wild West for raccoons and critters that like chicken as much as we do, right? And besides, they're pretty helpless, and so you got to do something. We had enough cages here that I could have put all the cages on a little flatbed trailer, and then loaded the back of my truck up with food and water and the dogs, and some gear for myself. And man, I'm just lucky. It never really got any closer than it did. We were threatened by a fire that was northeast from here. The wind was coming in the right direction. It was only 5 miles away. It was the elk fire last year, and it got pretty scary. I mean, I literally packed bags, had trailers ready, had the cages out, had water filled up, checked out my food supplies, and I was ready to book. I mean, when they say go, go. I mean, I do have the sneaking suspicion if it's a slow-moving fire and it's just brush, depending on what direction it's coming from. I have a well, and I have a generator that I can plug into that well, and I swear, I'm not, if it's something that I can do with a couple garden hoses on full blast with that, that kick-ass well that we have, and I'll fight it. I'll fight it as long as I can, but at some point, you can't fight the smoke. You can't breathe the smoke. I'm not in the best, health because of smoke. Over the years, I've had my share of that. And, so, when you got to go, you got to go. Think about the few things you need to take and have quick access to them. Have your bags ready. During fire season, when there's anything close to you, and it could start up, and 1 hour later, it's 10 miles away. 2 hours later, it's on your back porch if the wind is prevailing, in that direction. But besides all that, besides, the fires and the earthquakes, and fortunately, we're not prone to earthquakes up here in the northwest. But if you run out of food and water, it's a slow death, right? I mean, you have neighbors that might have food and water, but, do you really want to impose on them? If it's, over a weekend, or if it's something that's passing through, that's one thing. But, I'm talking more about people who are still, in the South, California, and that country is earthquake prone. Clearly, they're right there on the San Andreas Fault. If you don't have food and you don't have water, you will be miserable or worse. Rather than trying to figure something out at the last minute, have something ready. Have your clothes packed, right? Have some soap and a couple towels and water and the things that you're going to need. Easy to grab, like a grab bag. How hard is that? And it's not paranoid. It's kind of smart to have things set up. some people just can't bear to think about the awful possibilities, so they just bypass it. I like to think that being prepared is important. If the power goes out and it stays out for a while, what are you going to do? So think about, storing some things, some of the basics. There are thousands of channels out there that'll tell you, different ways. And different things to collect. Of course, there's rice and beans, but I mean, beyond, think about what you like for breakfast, what you like for lunch, what you like for dinner, and figure out how to get some of those supplies that are shelf stable. I mean, if you like spaghetti, there's canned pasta sauce and pasta noodles. I mean, those are things you can throw in a box, and keep them in your toolbox in your truck or whatever. I don't know, water. But then there's also medical supplies. Medical supplies are one of those kind of things. If you get hurt, and the last place you want to be is someplace far away from a hospital if you really get injured and you're bleeding, and it's problematic, that you can lose something. Funny, that dog, I keep thinking about that dog splaying out in my driveway. When I think people, they have these affinities for different kinds of dogs, cats, animals, pets. It all starts somewhere. I liked Rottweilers. I've had 4.5. One was a half breed over the years, and I've enjoyed every single one of them. I prefer females for some reason, but anyways, I was working on a job, and this was in Oklahoma when I was young, and I'm up on the roof, and I'm laying out, tar paper, little sheets. I wasn't a roofer, but I was helping somebody out, and so we were laying out, all the comp on the roof and getting it stacked and ready to go to install. And I climbed up with, this big bundle and pow, dropped it. And I'm climbing back down, and there was these windows across the back of this house. This thing had probably 6 of them. They were maybe 16 inches wide, 6 or 7 feet tall, and they were all evenly spaced, close to the ground, and they were tinted. Right? So I'm climbing down this ladder. I stepped 1 foot onto the ground, and I looked at these windows, and I thought, what the? I heard a sound. It was like a rumble. I went up and put my face on the glass, and what I saw was 2 gigantic white eyeballs with black dots. I didn't even register what that could have possibly been. The trick of the light. And then it barked. I guess it would be more like it roared. It was kind of like between a bark and a roar. I think he started roaring, and then he barked, and it shook the whole frickin' window. And oh my God! I stepped back, and I looked at the glass again. I thought, what in the? I couldn't, I couldn't add it up. And I asked the guy, I said, hey, I think there's a bear in their house. He goes, what? I said, I think there's a bear in their house. Why are you whispering? There's a bear in that freaking house. And he goes, oh, no, that's their dog. That's their dog, Tiny. The irony. I couldn't believe it. It was a dog. This thing, and I'm 6 feet plus, and I'm looking, and that had to be like 5'11" something. And this dog was standing up with his paws on the window and is looking right at the same place that I was looking at, and I scared it. It scared me. And I found out what kind of dog it was, and I bought one like a week later. That's how. And I had Rottweilers for years after that. And what a marvelous dog. They really don't bark much unless they have to, which is nice because the neighbors won't complain. Love them dogs. But as far as the earthquake, back to the earthquake things, I always wondered why schools didn't have earthquake supplies just in case. I mean, at the time, well, there was a couple other earthquakes later on. At the time, there were schools all over California that pretty much would keep your kids at school on the premises during an earthquake. Just, you're not going to turn them loose. You can't expect parents to make it there, especially if it's something, catastrophic, like a 7 or better. And so all these kids are at that school. Why on earth would they not have some sort of supplies? And I tried to go into business providing that, service to schools and getting things organized, and tried to push it through some local government things, and people weren't receptive. They just don't want to deal with shit like that. But I tell you what, you should at your own house, you should have some supplies there. As far as your vehicle goes, I always have a twofold system. 2 is 1, 1 is none. Excuse me. Have a backpack. A backpack, and it's not super complicated if you think about it. The kind of things you'll need. I would love to do a video on that one day. Just not sitting here at the table, but actually putting a camera on a table and pulling my backpack apart. It's the peace of mind is perfect. I mean, you need to have that supplies and sort of be ready. Better to have it, not need it, than need it, not have it kind of attitude. So, and then a smaller pack. So that plan A, and then there's a plan B. Plan B is, a smaller pack of, food, water, something you can carry over your shoulder, like a sling, pack with some first aid. First aid, another super important thing. Again, you really don't. You're not going to be doing major surgery. You're not going to be doing, amputations, or hopefully not anyway. Or but there are some injuries that are more commonplace in an automobile accident than others. I mean, you're probably not going to drown in an automobile accident, for instance, but all of the possibilities call for a unified effort with your first aid bag. I mean, it should be comprehensive, and it should be doubled up. I mean, suppose you use one gauze and you got 2 limbs that are having a problem, or someone else that needs, help. So first aid kit, food supplies in your truck, tools, a pair of pliers, a few screwdrivers, a crescent wrench, a set of channel locks, some baling and wire, some black tape. I'll stop there. It could go on. You could have a whole box, the whole box full of tools, but you got to know how to use them, and finding ways to keep what you need as far as tools, first aid, food supplies. That takes care of your truck, but that should be a mirror of what you have at your house. I mean, you don't put everything that you need at your house in your truck. Although one good thing about that is that your truck is always going to be with you, whether you're on the job. And that's kind of how my thinking was if I'm on the job and I'm an hour away from the house, at least I have some supplies. If I have to walk back to the house and it's, it takes me 5 or 6 hours, I'll get there. I'll have a backpack with my stuff and a way to protect it. Right? So, yeah. Let's see. I was looking at my notes here. It seemed like there was something else. Yeah. Let's shift gears a little bit. Now that you have, my thinking process out of the way on the preparedness, it actually goes a lot deeper than that. I mean, you really should have enough for you and your family, and some casual, if neighbors come by, and then if it gets long term, then you have to kind of adjust how that all works out. But shifting gears a little bit to staying on the same topic as food. If you ever watch those videos, food videos on YouTube, there are so many. If I lived close to a store and I had a better income, I'd weigh 400 pounds. All of these things. I found a recipe the other day. I was watching this, like these good old boys from was it Tennessee or Kentucky, and they had this chicken that was super famous, this Lincoln chicken, and the sauce was different from anything I was used to, and I've been doing beer can chicken forever, and I like it still. But I made this recipe based on what they did. I didn't have a 20-foot smoker and hickory wood, but I did cut the chicken and splay it, right? Open it up, put it into a huge pan. I got this huge pan because I was thinking one morning of a video that I was watching about these guys that were cooking, I don't know what they were. They were out at the ocean and they were cooking scampi and something else, but this pan was freaking enormous. And I thought, man, I got to get one of those. I don't know what I'll cook in it, but I got to get one of those one of these days. And by God, that very day I was on a job. Nice Italian people. She was getting on to her 80s, and her husband was just loaded with humor. Great people. But I'm working and I'm doing some repairs in their house, and I saw this. I saw this skillet on the corner of my eye. It was kind of like hanging in the kitchen behind stuff. And I said, "What on earth do you use that giant skillet for?" She goes, "Nothing. We don't use it for anything. I bought it. I was going to use it. Never used it, but it's just so pretty. I just left it hanging there." She goes, "You want it?" And yeah. One of the few times where when you think of something and it actually happens, it's kind of like, that makes your day. Well, I didn't use it for a long time. Life got busy. But I took it out about 2 weeks ago, and I used the same sauce recipe that these guys had been using. And I split that chicken, opened it up, put it on some sliced onions and some dehydrated apple slices that I had, and some garlic. Seasoned it with some, turmeric, and then some paprika and some salt and pepper and some spices. And I poured this sauce in there that was a 50-50 mix of apple cider vinegar and lemon juice with lots of pepper. And I just poured it on the bottom, filled it up about 1/4 inch. And I put the lid on it, kind of a medium low, and let it cook for probably, 2 or 3 hours total. But I mean, first time I actually flipped it over so that it was carcass inside up, right? So the breast was up. And then I scooped this juices and I was putting it back into the chicken, and I kept, pushing the apples and the onions and things back underneath the chicken just to keep it off the bottom so it wouldn't scorch. And I put the lid back on. So yeah, probably 2.5 hours. It was done. I always just lift one of the legs, and if it kind of separates real easily, you're pretty well guaranteed that that's done and safe to eat. So I let it cool off, and I started munching on this chicken. I took the big pieces and I put it in the fridge, but I left the skillet outside on the cooker. Off, of course, but with the lid on because it was so cold. Outside at night here, it's probably 27, and then it stays under 30 degrees all day for a week at a time. It's nice today, but it stayed fresh. There was so much. Oh, I forgot to mention I put butter in there, like 3/4 of a cube. Melted all. I put the butter, lemon. Apple cider vinegar, the pepper, the garlic, the onions, the seasonings. Marvelous chicken. It was a little drier than I wanted it to be. I have to work on that. But after I got the chicken out and I started scraping all of these scrapings out of the bottom of this pan, I'm thinking, man, those are chicken drippings and sauce. And I'll bet if I put some flour with that and stirred it up and made gravy with it, and I didn't get to that point, but I did scoop up. Yeah, I did scoop up the layer, which was probably 1/4 inch thick. It had, a solid layer of butter on top. Then I scraped it all, and it turns out that the onions caramelized beautifully, and blended with the dehydrated apples from the orchard from last summer. And the combination of those two things with the juices of the chicken and the lemon and the garlic and the onions and the vinegar, apple cider vinegar, it gelled. But I scooped that onto something and nuked it, put a little piece of toast into it, and tried it as a dipping sauce. Wow. I'm actually going to make another chicken tomorrow the same way. There's something to that. It's wow. Anyway, enough about my chicken story. So, what else we got here? Earthquake, food stores, truck bouncing, yeah, window, dog, yeah, 5 o'clock, fire country, yep. Well, guess that about does it. So I guess the moral of this one was more or less think about putting together some food supplies. Food supplies, tools, first aid. Have one in your house, one in your car. Because with all these earthquakes coming on, I mean, you think about it, if those earthquakes are going off in California, and we got sunspots now that are creating, problems with satellites and communication. I mean, what happens if your banking goes down? Oh, man. It could be really bad. It could not be anything at all. But why not, be ready for it? At least somewhat.